Don't forget to record.
Yeah, that's exactly. I literally was like, oh, gotta get the thing. Awesome. All right. I'm Paige, I'm an alcoholic, and welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're here. And yes, technically we are on page 76, but I do feel like it's helpful to talk a little bit again about the quiet hour. So, the quiet hour is this beautiful, beautiful period of time. Now, to be fair, it might not feel beautiful if it is your first time spending some time in a quiet hour, because, oh goodness gracious, that's a whole lot of time to sit still, especially if we haven't picked up meditation from the get-go. So what am I trying to do in this quiet hour? Again, we went into detail speaking about it last week, but I just want to touch on it a little bit because it flows so perfectly into page 76, where we'll speak about step 6 and step 7. And so in the quiet hour, what am I looking to do? But I'm looking to review the work that I have done so far. I'm looking to see, is my work solid so far? Are the stones and imagine that I'm building this cathedral of my spiritual life, is that properly in place? Have I tried to build it without a foundation? Have I tried to, the mortar that we're trying to connect these building blocks of the new way of life, have I been skimping on it, cutting corners? Have I been, cut twice, measure once? That's how, yeah, so you guys know, that's how I do I don't do construction, but that sort of idea. And to see, have I been fearless? Have I been thorough? Is that my experience? And so what happens, at least in my experience, is I spend that time in quiet. And I really love to not just ask myself if I've been fearless and thorough, if there's anything that I've missed, but I also love the idea of asking God. You know, we talk about, or at least I say we, I go on and on about it. Anytime in the book it says we ask, I'm like, girl, that's a prayer. Let's pray that, right? And it goes to say we asked if we've omitted anything. So I want to ask myself, is there anything that I left off? And I want to, at least for me, I want to ask God, is there anything that I've left off? Now, I don't think I spoke about this last week. Well, somebody will let me know if I did or didn't, because I don't always remember. But what happens? What happens if I am sitting in that quiet hour and stuff comes up? Because that was my experience, my first ever 5th step. And I do remember that I told you about slamming the pinky in the car door. I was like after, and I was so filled with like, oh, I suck and I'm the worst person ever. And I called my sponsor and she's like, pray about it. And so I asked God to take away this, obsession and the, I suck feelings. And I slammed my pinky in the car door. Now, I know some of you are like, oh, how wonderful, an answered prayer. This girl can multitask. We actually know that is not true. I cannot multitask. But listen, I can think about what a piece of garbage I am and how much my finger hurts at the same time. Turns out that was not the spiritual solution that I was looking for. But the spiritual solution I was looking for was the quiet hour and 6 and 7. And so for me, those move together. And in fact, if I am doing it like how the book recommends, or at least how I do it, man, I got 5, 6, 7 done in a day. Ooh, that's efficient. I'm rocking and rolling. And some of us are like, but I'm trying to stall because I'm afraid of 9. I know not you guys. No one here would ever be afraid of an amends. That's everybody that's ever come to Alcoholics Anonymous, or really anyone that's ever come to any 12-step fellowship. It's 9 that we're afraid of. Maybe it's not every 9, but we got some 9s we're afraid of. So I want to stall. But what happens? And I remember it was after my first ever 5th step that the stuff started to pop up, and I didn't know what to do. So I called my sponsor and I just told her what came up. Ta-da! That's it. Like crazy. I know it's annoying that I'm going to bring like a real simple solution. Just tell the person. And if you got to do some inventory, do some inventory. If it's just in my case, it was just, it was a traumatic situation that had happened. And I often make light of it. But I'd forgotten it. I had genuinely forgotten it. Maybe because there was a whole lot of bad stuff. But truly what happens is it's like, this is an area I don't look at myself on my own. You know what I mean? Like when I'm out there living my life, I'm not doing a lot of introspection. I'm doing a lot of, I don't like those feelings, better stuff those and pour some alcohol on it. That's how I live my life. And so what happens is I write that first inventory and I do that fifth step. And I'm clearing away so much stuff. But it is also invariable that there will be stuff that I forget. There will be stuff that comes up later. And that is okay. And here's the thing. Bear with me. Even if you left something off your fifth step, just call them. Call them. Tell them. Yeah. Honestly, it's okay. So that's what I recommend doing. And that's what I've done in the past. So I also, you guys remember from last week, I was talking about how I know it says quiet hour and then step 6 and then step 7, but my step 6 always makes its way into the quiet hour. And at least for me, how could it not? If I'm reviewing, especially the work I did in step 4 and what I saw in step 5, I'm just going to point out there's some defects. And I'm seeing them for what they really are. And I'm like, ooh, I want to have those little blinders. Ooh, no, thank you. Like the horses. No, thank you. Straight ahead. No. But I have a look at it. And what we're talking about as we get into step 6, the crux of what I'm trying to do in step 6 is willingness. It's willingness. And I talk about this quite a lot. Step 6 and step 7 is prime willingness real estate. It really, really is. I am never more willing to have God remove a defective character that I have than right after I shared with God and another human being about how that destroyed my life and the life of those around me. And then I'm sitting in that awareness and that reflection in the quiet hour. And then right before I got to go make amends for that thing, I'm ready for that to go. It's like prime willingness real estate. So I spend that full hour for me in the quiet hour, and then I move into 6 and 7. So it says, if we can answer, page 76, if we can answer to our satisfaction, we then look at step 6. So if I can say, all right, I've been as fearless and thorough as I can possibly be. All right, let's have a look. Let's have a look at step 6. It says, we have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. And to be indispensable is something that I could not live without. I can't live without willingness. And it says, are we now ready to let God remove from us all these things which we have admitted are objectionable? And I want to point something out. And this might be obvious, but it is God that is doing the removing. I'm not doing it. But let's be real, I want to do it. Do you know what I mean? I want to do it. I want to defeat my ego. You know what I mean? Which is a real ego-feeding proposition. Imagine I just crush and I get rid of my ego. And it's like, yeah, I did that. I got rid of that ego. Whoop, there it is. There it is again, right? And so my responsibility is not defect removal. My responsibility is willingness. If you guys remember in step 3, and I probably, if I was on the ball, which who knows if I was on the ball way back then or not. I'm rarely on the ball. But I often will show a little pink slip that I give to sponsees where it's like, you are fired from the management position of your life. And it's got the cause for termination, gross incompetence, see step 1 for further amplification. And so in the third step, I get my pink slip. I am fired, absolutely fired from the management position of my life. And you might be like, girl, that seems a little harsh. Well, my life was unmanageable. We copped to that in step 1. You know who was managing it? Me. I managed my own life into an unmanageable situation. If I was managing a Blockbuster as poorly as I manage my life, I mean, we might not be expecting Blockbuster to make a comeback. Although I've been making that joke for years, and I'm like, it might. Who knows? But you know what I mean? Like, there is like No, nobody has these expectations on Blockbuster. Well, the Blockbuster that is my life is on fire. It's not good. So I ought to be fired because I have done such a terrible job at managing my life. Okay, step 3, I am fired. But somebody's got to manage my life. You know what I mean? Like, somebody's got to. And so I sign what I call the employment contract. It's not a physical signature, but I offer that step 3 is like signing an employment contract. God is going to manage my life. God is going to be the manager. And I am going to work for God. And how do I go and I work for God? I do that in 4 through 9. And by continuing that process in 10, 11, and 12, that's what I do, and that's how I do. But here's the thing. We come to step 6, and it's like, ooh, do I get a spiritual promotion? You know what I mean? I would like to get some upper management, please. Ooh, and I do absolutely under no circumstances do I get a promotion. Defect removal is upper management, and I was fired. Absolutely fired from upper management. Defect removal is God's business. But I did get an addition to my job qualities or qualifications, which is willingness. So I have now been relegated to the willingness department. Oh, man. And I was just in house cleaning. I was in the spiritual janitorial services is what I was doing. Now, to be fair, I was the one that made the mess, so I'm the one that got to clean it up. But now I'm moved to willingness. That is my responsibility, to be willing. And like I said, how do I be willing? Well, in my experience, right after I did a step 5 and right before I go and make a step 9, I am never more willing for my defects of character to be removed than right there. But I also had this experience with a sponsee. She and I were talking about step 6 and step 7, and we were talking about some of her defects of character. And she's like, Paige, I get that God is supposed to remove this. I get that. But how do I demonstrate willingness? Now, if you are somebody where act as if or act the opposite works for you, that is amazing. Do that. But there's something about that just does not compute for my brain. But here is what does. In Bill's story, he says, I must turn in all things to the capital F, capital L, Father of light, who presides over us all. And so in my experience, and if you do it differently, you're right, I'm wrong. I am wrong all over the place. And I will say, come join me. I'm off the ball and I'm wrong and I have a lot of fun over here. But what I do is I genuinely do my best to seek God in every action that I take. And if I am seeking God, guess what I'm not doing? Being God. And if I'm not being God, I am less likely to, or in the delusion of the God chair, I am far less likely to act in those defects of character. And that's how I approach it. I seek God's will. And actually, man, I'm a little off on tangents, but that's to be expected. It's me. I really love, in step 11, I love doing a lot of seeking, like spiritual seeking. And in a variety of faith traditions. And there's this particular New Year's tradition and a particular faith. And part of what it involves is essentially throwing your defects into like flowing water. And so I got out, I went outside, I got a bridge that overlooks the river, and I wheeled my way over there, and I got a stale piece as a stale bun, because listen, I didn't prepare that well. I wasn't quite on the ball. Shock and awe. And I went to the bridge, and I had recently done some inventory. I'd recently done a 4 through 9, and I had this list of defects of character. And I thought, what a beautiful opportunity. And so what I did was I'm sitting on this bridge, And the Elbow River, it's this little, for some people you'd be like, girl, that is a creek at best, but it's this little river that's going down, and I'm sitting there, and I'm ripping off a little chunk of the bun, and I would hold it, and just sort of envision whatever was the next defective character on that list. And then, because I am an absolute child, I would then try to chuck it as far as I absolutely could, because I just wanted to see if it would like yeah, and I'm chucking them. And then, this is a true story. I had my codependency, and I gave it a little toss, and literally it landed, and a fish got it. And I was like, oh no, can fish have bread? Oh no. And I start looking up whether fish can have bread. So clearly in that moment, God did not take the codependency. It didn't leave. I am immediately guilt-ridden about this fish. It's fine. A little bit is fine. I immediately looked it up. But here's what I found is the defect removal process, at least for me, is not me chucking. What would happen as I was doing it, I began to just hold my arm out off the side of the bridge over the river. And it was as little as reaching. You see, I'm not even letting go of the defect. What I'm doing is I'm reaching for God, and that defect falls away. And that's the process for me. It's like I don't got to work on it for me. I don't got to manage it for me. All I've got to do is continually reach for God, and that little chunk of bread that is my codependency, the little chunk of bread that is my selfishness, the little chunk of bread that is, whatever. I reach out for God, and it just falls away. And that was a beautiful visual experience. So if you get a chance, go ahead and do that. It's a fun thing to try, and some of y'all know that, oh girl, I do metaphors and my brain works in visual. So if you're somebody that works in visual and you'd just like to have an experience, try it if you want. The book doesn't say to do it, so if you're like, no, that sucks, don't do it. And if you're worried about the fish, I don't know, find something ecologically friendly, because I was very worried about that little fishy. Yeah, I was going for a walk the other day, and there was a guy fishing right under the bridge. I'm like, oh, don't get my little fishy friend. I hope he's okay. All right. And so for me, what I am called to do is build willingness. I am not in defect removal. And it is God that does the removing. And here's the thing about that. Let me show you what my life looks like if I was going to be in charge of defect removal. All right, everybody, I am going to get a handle on my procrastination. Probably tomorrow is when I will get a handle on that procrastination. And listen, I am going to get free. It's going to be gone. That fear of what people think of me. But am I doing okay? I'm feeling a little off. Could I, the numbers are a little low in attendance. How we doing? Am I doing okay? And listen, I am going to get my anger right under control after you start, you know what I mean? And I'm going to overcome that fear. I'm going to overcome that fear. You know what I mean? I can't do it on my own power. I can't do it. And you know how I know I can't do it? Because I tried. Because I had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them, even though I would have liked to. The needed power was not there. The needed power was not in the idea of who I needed to be. The needed power is in God. And I need to access that power to grow into that person that I need to be. That's also why when I help sponsees with sex inventory and developing through sex inventory a sex ideal, I will take what they wrote and ask them to turn it to prayers, and I'll make it on a pretty little thing that nobody uses. But I put it on this pretty little thing in the hopes that they will pray on a daily basis those things and take those things to meditation, to breathe in those qualities, breathe out those qualities, to practice bringing that power of God into those things. That's what I do. Y'all don't need to do that if you don't want to, but I can't live up to them. man, I cannot tell you for years, I would have sponsors tell me, Paige, you gotta set boundaries. And you know what? I knew I had to set boundaries. I knew it. Could I set boundaries? No, I could not communicate. I couldn't be honest. By the way, boundaries is a modern language for me just being honest about what my limitations are. That's what that means, you know? And I could not do it. Paige, could you just say no to that thing? No, I would say yes. And I would do it again and again and again and again, even though I didn't want to. But what would I do is I would continue to seek and develop my relationship with God. I would seek and I would develop that relationship with God. I would inventory that thing. I would see it again. You know what I mean? I would grow in prayer, grow in meditation. And what happens is the more that I seek this power, the more it falls away from me. And when it falls away from me, what that means is I know that I didn't do it. The change comes over me. The change happens to me. I take actions that I don't want to take, and the change happens to me. So it is God that does the removing. And it is simply me reaching for and seeking God and God's will for my life. Or at least that's what I do. And so one of the things is, so my experience, right? That idea is like, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous and I think, well, to be honest, when I first come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I think he is the problem. He, as in my ex, he is the problem. And if y'all could get him under control, I would be fine and I could drink like a lady, pinkies up. And then y'all bamboozled me. Turns out I was the alcoholic. Shock. I mean, he is too, but like, shock and awe, you know, with my alcoholism. And so I come to the realization my problem is obviously alcohol. And then y'all are doing some spiritual judo on me and you say, no, problem's not alcohol. The problem is the obsession of the mind. The problem is not alcohol. The problem is that you continue to go back to alcohol again and again and again, despite the fact that it is ruining your life. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's not good. And then as we get into step 2 and step 3, we begin to look at the spiritual malady. In step 2, I begin to see those bedevilments, which is an expression of what it is like to live in a place of conscious separation from God. Can't make a living, a feeling of uselessness, prey to misery and depression. You know, I'm living in the sense of pain because I have a sense of disconnect from this power. And that I can't do anything about. And then I go to step 3 and we talk about selfishness, self-centeredness. That is the root of our troubles. And I'll talk about the root as selfishness and self-centeredness because every single defective character comes from selfishness and self-centeredness. But what leads to selfishness and self-centeredness is a conscious sense, and it is only a sense of separateness from God. And I can't do that. It tells me I can't overcome my selfishness on my own power. I cannot overcome self with self, and I want to. And then I come to this inventory process and I have a look at my resentments and I can't overcome them on my own power. I need to have God's help. And then what happens is I have a look at my fears. I'm riddled with those. And I can't overcome those on my own power. I need God's help. I look at my sex conduct. Guess what I can't do? I can't live up to who I need to be in that or any other area of my life on my own power. I need God's help. I share with God and another human being in step 5. And I become acutely aware of my defects of character. When I work with sponsees, I give them a list. I give them a list. I never was given a list. I had to do my own, but I give them a list. And I come to step 6, and I cannot overcome my defects of character on my own power either. And you see, Alcoholics Anonymous works very different than any other area of life. You see, in so many areas of life, what are we doing? We are trying to climb like the corporate ladder. To get more, to be more successful, to get the next level, to do this thing, and to be more. And that's not my experience of Alcoholics Anonymous. My experience of Alcoholics Anonymous is I come here, and it is an outpouring of more and more of myself to the unconditional love that is God. And I will explain why it's the unconditional love that is God as we talk about the 7th step prayer. So it is God that does the removing. And it says, so are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? So what is God going to remove? The defects of character, the shortcomings, the exact nature of my wrongs, which are the same thing. Same thing. Unless you want to be fancy and for you they're different, in which case you are correct. You are right. And again, I'm over here, off the ball, off the beam, super wrong, but having a lot of fun. So, I mean, do join me. So for me, it's the same thing. Because it doesn't make sense for me to become aware of something, to ask for something or to become willing for something to go, something different, and then to ask for a third separate thing to leave. Doesn't it make sense for me to see, wow, this is not good. I hope that goes. Please take it. That's the vibe for me, because that makes the most sense. And to be fair, that is what Bill said. He didn't want to be redundant in his writing. He didn't want to use the same word over and over and over again. But I will say he is redundant in his writing. He says the same point again and again and again in a different way. So what is objectionable? So when I write down the list of defects of character, what I always start with is I start with selfish and self-centered. Because every single defect of character I have can fall into those two characteristics. Selfish. Now, selfish is how I act and behave in the world. And self-centered is how I think and I perceive. I'm going to make my joke and then I'll give you the definition again, just in case you're trying to write it. So my joke is selfish. That's when I steal your car, I sleep with your husband, and I pee on your carpet. That is selfish. When I'm worried you don't like me because I did those things, that's self-centered. That's the difference. And so, again, selfish is how I act, and self-centered is how I think and perceive. And then from there, we see a variety of defects of character. So I see various forms of dishonesty. So there's the dishonesty that is the outright lying. And why would I be dishonest? Because I'm driven by 100 forms of fear, right? If I'm not afraid, I can just be honest. Fear drives my dishonesty. And so I've got manipulation. That's a form of dishonesty. My walls and my masks, my ego and my image maintenance. Of course, manipulating, lying, stealing, that's all, sleeping with your husband. All of that is dishonest, And again, I am just kidding. I would never do any of that. It was linoleum. You guys, some of you guys are sick of the linoleum joke, but I'm not sick of saying it, Dishonesty can also look like saying yes when I need to say no. Saying yes when I know that I'm going to be resentful. Not communicating with open and honest communication because I'm afraid that you're going to reject me. And then when we look at those various forms of selfish, it can be the controlling, the perfectionism. I know nobody here's got that perfectionism. I need to be perfect or I'm garbage, right? Controlling, perfectionism. I create a rule book that I expect other people to follow. I'm inconsiderate. I operate from this place of entitlement and I don't think about other people and it's only about what I can get. When we look at self-seeking, what I can see is my judgment, my criticism, gossip. That can also tie into dishonesty. I see where I make other people God, or I make false gods in my life where I need to be okay, where I need external benchmarks to be okay. I gotta have a relationship, or I gotta be married, or I gotta make this much money, or have this many friends, or do that. You know what I mean? I need you to like me, or I'm not okay. And that's codependency. I also have this need to be right and seen as right, because I can't just be right. I need to be right with an audience. I need a unanimous consensus in full agreement of my perpetual correctness for me to be okay. I'm sure that you guys can't relate to that either. Y'all are, I'm sure you guys are all laid back all the time. I'm right, I get stuck in that. And I'm driven by these various forms of fear. Fear I'm not going to get what I want. Fear that I'm going to lose what I have. And I look at also the codependency. I contort myself. I make myself somebody that I'm not. And I put myself in this like position that I'm not meant to be in just so that you don't reject me. Some of that might sound a little familiar, but that is why it can be helpful to go a little bit deeper than my defects are only selfish and self-centered. It can be helpful to see those various manifestations. Some of my manifestations are going to be different than some of yours. I tend to lead toward less than ego and codependency far more than grandiosity and controlling this outward, like, do what I say. I'm going to use my power to get you to do what I want. No. I'm going to do what you want, so you give me a little bit of approval. Approve of me, like, because I need it, right in the veins. Give me that approval, right? That's how I operate, but it can be helpful to see more clearly what they are. And something I'll throw out, just because a lot of times I'll work with people, and they'll want to use the word lazy as a defect. And and this is my experience with it. Again, if you disagree, you're right, I'm wrong. But I encourage us not to write lazy as a defective character. Because if I am lazy, there's nowhere else for me to go from there. Well, just don't be lazy. Anyone here been told you're lazy and then told yourself, I'm not going to be lazy? And then you get stuck? You see, the problem with that as a defective character is it doesn't identify what it really is. And I'm on this tangent. I was talking with somebody about this earlier today. That's why I'm on it. And so often, it is not that I am lazy. Perhaps I'm experiencing overwhelm. Maybe I took on too much because I need you to like me. Sound familiar? And I don't know where to get started. Maybe I'm too afraid to ask for help. Maybe I'm afraid of being seen as wrong and stupid and you already gave me the directions and I don't know how to ask again. Maybe I'm afraid of that action. Maybe I am experiencing executive dysfunction, and executive dysfunction is where I can't get started without help. Or I need somebody to just sit with me to get it going, right? Or it's a misprioritization of values, and it's like if I approach these things with compassion and curiosity, it goes deeper. It goes deeper. So I tend to err away from using lazy. I'm just lazy. But let's look a little bit deeper, because maybe that there is a need that I need. And similarly with lust, I don't use lust so often, but I was reading some Oxford group literature because, again, I'm so much fun just hanging out, reading. I think it was the 8 points of the, I'm pretty sure it was the 8 points of the Oxford group. I just love that book. It's fun. It's actually, hold on, when I say it's fun, keep in mind, lately, the last few nights I've been waking up with a little bit of anxiety, like early morning anxiety. So I've been trying to go back to sleep because I don't need to be up at 8 a.m. So I've been putting on varieties of religious experience to fall back asleep to. So when I say that a piece of literature is fun, I just need us to I don't want you to come back and say you lied. No. I have fun with it, but it is me. But in it, the 8 points of the Oxford group, it talks about the idea of lust. And it's not that our inherent human desires are bad, but what is bad is when I stop treating a human being as a human being. When I stop treating a child of God as a child of God, and instead I treat this person as an object, something to give me whatever I want. And I can do that outside of the realm of romantic relationships. And I can do that with human beings. And so that's sort of my sort of take on some of those, just shaking it up. So when I see what they are, and when I can truly see what they are, right after I shared them, done my quiet hour, and right before I go out and make amends, that's usually when I am the most willing to grow, to change, and to be somebody different. So on page 76, he says, can he now take them all? Everyone. All. Everyone. And that's a question. So I want to pause and all. Because think about it. It's you're going to take all of my people pleasing? If you guys remember from step 3, it's not people pleasing. It's approval. I'll say seeking, because I don't want to say the word that starts with the W, because I'm watching my language. Because you know what I mean? If I'm so afraid, who will I be without this defective character? Will I be the hole in the donut? Which, by the way, in Canada, We have donut holes. They're called Timbits. And which means is I'll be who I was always meant to be. Now, that's me making a donut hole joke. But the truth is, who will I be without this defective character? Is who I truly wanted to be. And who God wants me to be. Because I was always afraid that I was going to get like this ability to communicate honestly, i.e. set boundaries. And God was going to make me a big stinky jerk, and I was going to be a jerk to everyone. And overnight, I'd be like, F you, F no, like pew pew. That's not what has happened. I have not had that sort of transformation. I'm not going to grow into that sort of person, but I am more likely to say, unfortunately, that's not something I'm able to do. Here's what I am able to do if that would work for you. And if not, that's okay. So it's like, I'm afraid of who I will be without these things. But I want you to know, because 6 and 7 is again a precipice. It's like, who will I be? Like a precipice is the edge of the cliff. Just like at step 3, it's like, oh man, I'm terrified of these 12 steps. We might be afraid of who we will be. Who we will be if we, let God remove these defects of character. But again, it is who I always wanted to be. And it says, so when it says, can he now take them all? Every one. And then this is beautiful. Because some of us are like, all of my dishonesty, all of my, but I want to, actually, another Oxford group book, there's a book, it's called Uncommon Friends, and there's an Oxford group member who's friends with like Henry Ford and Harvey Firestone and all those things, and in it, I don't know why I'm on these tangents, but neither here nor there. Because I meant to, I guess. We get what we get, and it's okay if we get upset. I'll help you write inventory on me. But in it, the Lindenberg family, of the Lindenberg baby, and they had the media hounding them for years. Charles Lindenberg and his wife hounding. And not alcoholic. Nobody in that story is an alcoholic. But this Oxford group guy was like, hey, why don't you reach out to the press and make an amends for holding on to this anger and this resentment? And of course, their lives did not need to depend on getting free of this resentment like ours do. But I remember listening that his wife was like, no, well, they were like, no, we're not open to that. And the wife was like, oh, we just need a little resentment. It's the spice of life. And for us, it's more like what's the hottest chili of life? Cause it'll kill us. It's too spicy for us. I can't hold on to it, but I'm afraid of who will I be with or what my life will look like. And here's another beautiful example of the book meeting me where I'm at, with grace, compassion, understanding, and a direction of where I need to go. It says, if we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. And anytime it says we ask, there's a prayer. Y'all know there was a step 6 prayer? Sneaky. It's tucked right in there. We focus on the step 7 one because it's, it's pretty big, it's pretty fancy, but there's a step 6 prayer right in there. And that is a beautiful prayer. And it is one that I can use for any spiritual action in my life. If I am unwilling to take any spiritual action, I can pray for the willingness to take that action. And if I do that, I promise you, already that willingness will grow. But if I don't even have the willingness to pray for, you can technically go and pray for the willingness to pray for the willingness, and you can do that ad infinitum. We can keep that going and going and going and going. But if I don't have the willingness to pray for willingness, that's when we're in trouble. The thing that kills alcoholics alcoholism, the inevitability of the first drink. But what really gets us is complacency, inaction. If I am taking action, I'm moving in the right direction. Spiritual action, by the way, it doesn't mean hey, I did 20 minutes on the treadmill, I'm going to be fine. I promise you, I've not done 20 minutes on a treadmill in a very long time. Not doing treadmills, but so you get why that's funny. But that idea that if I am not willing, and I am at least willing to pray for the willingness, God can move within that. And I was talking about how I'm off on these like old lame book tangents. I've been listening to, like I said, varieties of religious experiences. And he talks about, there's a part in the book where it talks about conversion, like the process of having a spiritual awakening. And he describes this is the process for sudden conversion. And I'm paraphrasing. The process is where we are in so much pain and we come to the end of ourselves. And he describes it as, I believe, frustration. I come to this place of frustration, that place of hopelessness. And that leads to then surrender. Now you'll notice the word surrender is not in the book Alcoholics. It's not there, but that does not mean we're not talking about surrender, because that's what we're doing. We're surrendering ourselves and this part of our lives to this power, which is God. They probably did not use the word surrender because it was so synonymous with the Oxford group and what they were about, and they didn't want it to create some separation. But there are some people who talk about concession. Conceding is deeper than surrender, and that's cool too. But we go from that frustration, or as we write in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, hopeless, and that leads to that surrender. And from surrender comes relief. And it's that same process. I need to see that I can't do it my way, that I can't fix and manage and control, that I am willing to let this power truly have all of me. But if I am struggling with that, I pray for the willingness. I pray for the willingness. Beautiful. And that is the compassion. So it says, when ready, we say something like this. So if you want to come up with your own step 7 prayer, just like your own 3rd step prayer, you can. At least for me, I'm not a big believer that God cares so much about the words as the intention. You know what I mean? And a lot of prayers, some of you guys know, one of the hills that I die on was that, of course, they had meditation in the 1930s, but often it was called prayer, like the prayer of quiet, the prayer of consolation, the prayer of recollection, quiet. There was meditation. But it's about the action. It is about the action, not about doing it right. I know I said nobody here had perfectionism, but just going to throw that out there. It is about the action and the intention. So, my Creator. And I want to, this is going to be annoying if you're like, I was hoping we get to 8 and 9, but let's be real. Most people, when we're at 6 and 7, we're terrified of 8 and 9. So we don't mind trying to sit. But my Creator, I'm going to go through this prayer a little slowly. My Creator. Think about the things in your life that you have created. Other than a mess of your life, they have been made with love and care and attention. My Creator. That idea that you have been made with love and care and attention. This is where we get this beautiful lens into a couple things. The first for me in the Step 7 prayer is this lens in the unconditional nature that is God's love. It says, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Good and bad. So I am now willing that you should have all of me. How often did I think I needed to get good to get love? Maybe get good to get God, but in any area of my life, I think I need to get good, be a good girl, just make myself small or whatever it is so that you will like me. I need to get good to get God. I need to get good to get love. And that is not what Alcoholics Anonymous is. I come to God as I am. I come to God with the mess. And God, it's not that God is like, fine, I'm going to put up with your garbage. I'm going to take your garbage and I'll see what I can do with it. You know what I mean? It's not that. It is a God that wants all of me. Good and bad, wants all of me. And if you're like, girl, I think you're just getting a little excitable. That happens. But I don't think I am. Because here's how I know. It says, I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. I'm asking God to take away. I'm giving it all to God, and I'm asking God to take away every single defect of character which stands in the way of my what? My usefulness to God and my fellows. What does that mean? That means God wants all of me. God will use all of me. And then my role is to be of use to God. You see, when I got fired in step 3 from the management position of my life, I was like, oh, that sucks. That's lame. And then I come here and I want to do defect removal. And I get to do something more powerful than defect removal. I get to work for God. I get to be an agent of God. And God's love and God's grace and God's compassion and God's mercy wherever I go, or whatever resonates with you. That's what I get to do. It is not a God that is like, oh, I'll put up with your defects. It is a God that wants all of me, including my defects, that is meeting me in my defects, that is meeting me in the worst things that I have ever done, that is meeting me in the depth of my shame, that is meeting me in the depth of my self-hatred, the things that make me think that I am so unworthy of you and love and life, and is meeting me exactly there. That is the God that is available, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, that is available in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I begin to awaken to it here in step 7 and with the 7th step prayer. And you see, I'm asking for God to take away every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to others. And I've heard people talk about, well, like, I give God the good and the bad because I don't know which. But a lot of times I do know when things are bad. But I will say, I heard this gentleman share this at a meeting one time many years ago. And he was talking about how he just started gardening. And it was before you could get like on your phone the thing where you could like Google image search what sort of plant it was. And there would be these plants that were growing and he didn't know what was weeds and what wasn't. And I will tell you, here is my experience. I can't tell you how often things that I was sure were defects of character in God's hands get transformed into blessings for other people. I can't tell. Listen, I am on my own power. I am Little Miss Rigid Pants. I like my schedule. I'll be honest, I am easily institutionalized, and it's not because I like grippy socks. Although that's a little side bonus. Ooh, hospital pants, so comfy. They're light, they're breezy. Anywho, no. And they have the ice. Ooh, I love ice to chew on. It's great. But that. I like my routine, and I have a hard time when there's a change to like a routine or schedule. I have a hard time with transitions, and on my power, man, that creates a lot of internal anxiety and but in God's hands, that same defective character in God's hands, man, I don't miss prayer. I don't miss meditation. I don't miss evening review. And it's something that leads me and draws me back to that power, which is God. And I can't tell you, and this is something we'll talk about on page 124. On page 124, it talks about Henry Ford once made the wise remark to the effect that experience is the thing of supreme value in life. And that is true only if one is willing to turn the past to good account. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and turn them into assets. And the result of that is that the alcoholic's dark past becomes the principal asset. What happens here is the worst things that I've ever done, the worst things about who I am, they get utterly, radically transformed into gifts and into blessings that I get to use to help another person. My sponsor kind of talks about this, where it's like my sponsees don't care when I do things well. Like, none of my sponsees are like, oh boy, she showed up on time. They're like, yeah, you're supposed to. And I'm punctual. I'm real good at being punctual. But they don't care about what I do well. What's helpful to my sponsees is when I tell them when I fall short and how I made it right. You see, that's the thing, is I live in this economy where nothing's right. Like my internal spiritual economy, where it's like everything is not enough and I'm burning it to the ground and it is all wasted and everything turns to like ash in my hands. But in God's hands, whatever I bring to God turns into something that is useful, purposeful, meaningful to myself and others, more importantly to others. So I am called to go out from here to be of service to God, because it's removed from me anything that sends away my usefulness to you and my fellows. And then it says, grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. And what is God's bidding for somebody like me? And I will tell you right here, right now, in the 7th step, what is God's bidding? Go and make amends. That's it. Go and make amends. And there's a lot of times people will be like, well, I don't want to make amends if I'm going to continue the behavior. Here is my experience. The behavior will continue until I make amends for it. There are so many times I needed to make, I'll tell you about it. Gossip. That was a defective character. I'd talk about people, and people, bring me their stuff, and I'd be like, ooh, tell me, right? And then and I would feel it. Why do we gossip? In fact, most of our defects of character follow this pattern. I show up to life with a sense of less than ego. This feeling that who I am at the core of my being is not enough. And then I act on this defect of character to give myself a little boost, a better than ego. So I will gossip, or I will judge, or I will criticize, or somebody who's an anger out person will engage in anger, or I will people please, I will codepend, I will self-seek even when trying to be kind, and I will do all of that so I get something that gives me a sense of better than ego. So I can just feel that for a moment. And if instant gratification was so good, why does it only last an instant and I fall back into feeling worse? And that is the pattern that almost all of these defects seem to follow in my life. And they separate me from you, and they separate me from God. And so, people would, bring me gossip, or I'd talk about other people. I could flower it up. I'm just processing. Now I'm talking nonsense is what I'm doing. I'm not processing nothing. And so what happened is it became clear that I was doing this. And it came clear in inventory, because it behooves me to write that. And I would see that in inventory. And I needed to make amends. Now, I've not found it helpful to go to some, because there's nothing, I've had people that were like, hey, Paige, I was really judging you, or I talked a lot of garbage about you. They didn't use that word, but I'm watching my language. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's not helpful. So what I did was I made a conscious effort to begin to say nice things to their face. This was many years ago. I do really like pumping people's tires, so I don't want you to think if I'm saying nice things about you or to you that I'm talking garbage about you. That was many, many, many years ago. And I love you. And I would go and be intentional about saying nice things behind their back. And when I did that, you know what happened? I stopped gossiping, and I don't even want to hear it. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear your hot gossip. If you bring me hot gossip, I want to see how we can help that person. I want to see how we can love that person. Or I'll ask you to write inventory, and then you don't call me back. And that's how I got people to stop gossiping with me. It really works. So at least for me, how defects of character are usually taken from me, root and branch, is when I go and I make amends for them. There is such a beautiful flow to this thing. And so that is God's will for me, at least that I believe. And so it says, amen. And the word amen, and I'm not always good at different, I like my words, I forgot to look up, but like amen is the typical end to a prayer, end to a prayer. And you know what's interesting? 3rd step prayer doesn't got an amen. And I remember hearing at a meeting one time that means that from 3 all the way to 7, every action that I take is a prayer. And when I first heard this is how spiritual revelations come to me, is I thought, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Absolutely not. Wasn't see fit to remove my judgment in that moment. Caught that one, And whenever I feel like that, I'm like, oh, goodness gracious, we know that there's some truth to it. And how beautiful it is when I am able to live my life as a prayer. Can I live my life and take actions as a prayer, as a way to connect to God? And it says, we have then completed step 7. And it's like, wait, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I was so confused. I'm like, there's got to be more to it. And the more to it will happen in step 10. There's a beautiful tie-in. Of course, we saw the thread between 3 and 7. But there's also that tie-in between 7 and 10, and 7 in the evening review in 11. Because in step 10, I will have these things pop up. They will pop up in the first direction I have after I see them pop up. Direction 1 is watch. Direction 2 is pray. I ask God to take them from me. And then there's some other actions I got to do. I got to discuss it with somebody through the columns. That's how we don't gossip. Make amends if I've harmed anyone. And turn my thoughts to someone I can help. And it's like the more that I'm willing to grow in this way of life, the more I will grow in my step 7. And I on the time, don't you where I see it. That is my experience. And what I will end on. Because real quick, as I talk about this, that idea that sobriety and Alcoholics Anonymous is a gift. Now, if you're pedantic, although I don't think we have too many of our pedants here, but if you are pedantic, you're like, excuse me, it says a price must be paid. Yeah, it meant destruction of self-centeredness. We must turn in all things to the Father of Light who presides over us all. That idea that this is a gift. Sobriety is a gift. Deeper than that, emotional sobriety, which is a synonym for an awakened spirit, which is a synonym for the fourth dimension, which is what we're after. That is a gift. And I mean that. I did not earn it. I did not deserve it. I did not become worthy of it, as we saw here. And it's a little like Christmas morning. It would work better if I had an Easter reference, but I don't. A little like Christmas morning. And what do I do on Christmas morning? All I need to do is awaken. And imagine Christmas morning, that tree. It's got the tinsel, it's got the lights, it's got the decorations. It's far too early, so the lights are on, and it's got that beautiful glow. And underneath that tree is a present. And it is a beautiful present. It's big and it's immaculately wrapped. It's got a bow, and on that present it's got a name tag, and it's got your name. Your name. And what do? Well, we awaken. And how do I awaken? Well, I've got to go down those stairs. I don't go up the stairs. I go down those stairs because I'm outpouring more of myself to the unconditional love that is God. And that present is there for each and every one of us, whether we want it or not. It is available to all of us. And the only thing that is asked of me is to work these 12 steps. Like my life depends on it, because it does. So that's it for me. Thanks for letting me say words.